Hello, my name's Michael Conneely, and this video is all about our sense of self. Who am I? In this fraught age where Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto and Uranus are all clashing, following what came in the energies from the winter solstice, 21st of December 2020. Now there's two blogs to accompany this video. One is all on the question of who am I, and the second one goes much deeper into the astrology and shows the chart. And so the title for that blog is The Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, Uranus New Age Astrology. Okay. So let's get back to the issue of Jupiter and Saturn conjoining and starting a new Jupiter-Saturn age at the winter solstice 2020. What does it mean when Jupiter and Saturn conjoin? The important thing to realise is that Saturn is all about consolidation and structure and limits and hard work, discipline, fears and tensions. But if we do the work, Saturn's reward is golden reaping. Jupiter, on the other hand, is very, very different, all about expansion and inspiration, sense of purpose, guru connection and blessing. So, at each Jupiter-Saturn conjunction new age, there's a new and different balance of these two great opposites, depending on the balance of strength between the two, the sign they're in, the element they're in, the element of that sign, and the disposition of the other planets around them at the start of that new age. Now at this time we have an unusual Jupiter-Saturn conjunction governing the new age that will run for 20 years. And that's because at the start date, winter solstice 2020, Jupiter was at its degree of greatest debilitation and weakness in Vedic Capricorn, whereas Saturn is super strong in Capricorn, the sign he rules. This means that Jupiter's energies of expansion, blessing and sense of purpose and guru connection are all trashed. And also recession will come in now, as it did the last time, Jupiter was in Capricorn and Saturn and Jupiter were conjunct in 2008. So this means that Saturn's demands for structure and duty and patience and consolidation are all super strong in this new age and can't be ignored without grief. Before winter solstice 2020, we were all in a Jupiter time, but everything changed at the winter solstice because we are now in an age of Saturn. I certainly feel the difference. It's important and helpful to realise that the last time this situation happened, with the two of them coming together in Vedic Capricorn and starting a new Jupiter-Saturn age with Saturn super strong and Jupiter super weak, was actually the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction of 1961. And what did that do? It brought in the 60s. So the point is, each of us is now in a very similar big time shift as were the people of the age of the 60s then. It's as big as that. So we each of us must now understand the new age we are in now, that is now dawning. We each must understand who is the new me, the real me, within this new age. It is as big as that. It's inescapable. A Jupiter-Saturn new age of this magnitude, with Saturn so strong and Jupiter so very weak, forces societies to change. It also forces individuals to change and forces each of us to understand ourselves anew. Each of us has to come to a new understanding of him or herself as this new age unfolds. We each have to answer the question, who is the new me, created by the new age, started with the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction of winter solstice 2020 that will be unfolding for 20 years. Now, obviously, that begs the question of the hinge issue, what is the self? So please see my separate video and blog all about what is the nature of the self. Understand yourself now, it's called. I want to say, however, that this new age isn't just a case of Jupiter and Saturn. Last time, the 60s, was Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune. This time is very different. Yes, it's Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, but also Uranus in Vedic Aries, Rahu North Node and Pluto, adding immense tension, revolution, pressure, drivenness. Okay, let's look at these planets in detail. So first of all, Saturn. Now, at the level of understanding our Saturn self, look at what houses Saturn occupies and rules in your Vedic birth chart. You're there to see what your Saturn karma scripts are. And look what planets Saturn aspects. And by the way, there's a very useful page in my Star Wheel Astrology website all about the meaning of each of the houses and many other similar helpful web pages. So negatively, Saturn is our blocks and fears, our rigid behavioural scripts and ways of thinking. But positively, Saturn is our needed structure and strategy and our qualities of endurance and hard work and patience. None of us fully connects with the divine nature of a planet in this life. We all connect with any planet through filters, as it were, like sign, house and aspects. So I do find myself and can suggest to you that it is so worthwhile to do some vision work, to make a special effort to see yourself standing before Lord Shani, Saturn, Lord of Karma. Be fully embodied as you stand before him and talk through him where you stand on his issues and how where you stand on his issues affects your identity, your sense of self, and strengthen your connection to the positive benefits of Saturn. I've done a separate video and blog on connecting to the divine Saturn. Okay, let's look at Jupiter. Well, again, to check out Jupiter in your life this time, look at the houses that Jupiter occupies and rules, and look at the planets, the Jupiter aspects. Now, negative Jupiter is over-expansionary, ungrounded hyper-optimism that must crash. But positively, Jupiter is our connection to Guru energy, our valid expansion, our sense of purpose, our reception of blessing. So again, you can do a vision journey to try to build a strong connection to the divine nature of Jupiter, Brihaspati. And again, I've done a separate blog and video on how to connect with the divine Jupiter. I love this sort of vision work myself. I find it really helps me evaluate myself, helps me evaluate my life and how I'm handling it. But of course, it's not as simple as just understanding Jupiter and Saturn in our lives now at the start of this new age. And that is because there are additional, terrible, fraught energies pitting themselves against each other in the heavens at this time. We are truthfully caught up in a war of the Titans. In the new age of the 60s, it was Saturn-Jupiter, but also Neptune in Libra was dominant. But now in this new age, following winter solstice 2020, it's much more large and much more fraught. Pluto, Uranus, Rahu North Node, as well as Neptune, are all dominant and fighting each other, in addition to the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction balance. So let's look at this current war of the Titans, especially from the point of view of how it will force you to redefine your sense of yourself. Okay, let's start with Pluto. The first thing to happen a few days after the 2020 winter solstice was that Pluto entered Vedic Capricorn on the 31st of December 2020. So what is Pluto's energy, which now joined with Saturn and Jupiter, came into our life this way, in Capricorn? And what house is that in your chart? Well, Pluto is all about power, buried power, shadow, and the abyss. Pluto, of course, pits himself against Saturn's restrictions. It is a clash of the Titans. The ideal would be that Saturn changes so that structures and strategies can properly support Pluto's expression in ourself and in our society. But as we all know, we as individuals can fight against what we need, and societies can be very reluctant and slow to change. So the energies of this clash play out in our lives. Pluto at a personal level is our power issues, our disempowerment, our buried power, the power that was not allowed to us, the shadow self. So it's a very good idea to study your natal Pluto, and in fact I do a Pluto astrology reading called A Journey to the Abyss, where we go over your Pluto astrology and then journey into the abyss to confront our Pluto issues, and so that we arise lightened and freed and more able to receive the divine light which comes down to each of us through the crown chakra, Ketha. And the other big issue connected to Pluto is, of course, the ingress of Pluto on the 31st of December 2020 started the Pluto return of the USA. In other words, when Pluto in the heavens closes on the position of Pluto in the birth chart of the United States of America. Dark issues of power and shadow issues will have to surface at this time of the Pluto return. It will affect each individual in the USA, and of course, because the USA is so powerful, it will affect each individual in the world. It is a Pluto time, and Saturn will not easily be responsive to Pluto's demands. But the other planet clashing against against Saturn is Uranus. So Uranus, as I speak, is forming a square aspect to Saturn. Uranus in Vedic Aries, Saturn in Vedic Capricorn. Now Uranus was discovered at the time of the fall of the Bastille and the US War of Independence. And Uranus smashes against negative Saturn structures and blocks, just like the old French aristocracy had to meet the guillotine. So in your life, Uranus is smashing at your structures and blocks that you impose on yourself, or your parents imposed, or your society imposed. And Pluto is exploding against your blocks. This is why I'm doing this work, to show us how we can develop a new and more productive sense of ourselves. And with Uranus, the planet of revolution, smashing against our blocks now, it raises the whole question of, well, how do I bring in my needed revolution? What's the nature of my needed revolution? What do I do with the rest of my life? There is a twist to this Uranus tale, by the way. It's very important, actually. The last time that Uranus was transiting Vedic Aries, what happened was that Adolf Hitler came to power and brought in the Second World War. That shows you the sort of energy that Uranus in Aries can be. And of course there are so many war hotspots, and they seem to be escalating lately. Okay, we move to Neptune. So at the time of the last Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Vedic Capricorn, where Jupiter was super debilitated, it was the swinging 60s. Neptune was transiting Vedic Libra and bringing in the age of peace and love, man. But at that time, it was just Neptune. This time it's Pluto, Uranus and Rahu as well. So this is bringing in another new age, which might almost be called the terrible 20s. And however, Neptune is well placed to bring us inspiration if we can avoid his damaging dark side. His dark side is drink, drugs and delusion, deception, etc. But Neptune's positive gifts are sensitivity, inspiration and vision. Okay, let's just look at Rahu, the North Node. Rahu is transiting in Vedic Taurus. He's casting an aspect to Saturn, an exact aspect recently. And this is causing such tension because Rahu is expansionary and driven, and Saturn wants none of that. Saturn is constriction and form. And so we have all been faced with mind-bending tension, but also fears. Rahu's energy, big time, includes fear. We all need Rahu's ambition and direction, but we have to purify our Rahu, and we have to get Rahu and Saturn to work together. So, of course, look at the house that is Vedic Taurus, where Rahu is transiting. The house in your birth chart that is Vedic Capricorn, where Saturn is transiting, and get the two to work together so that Saturn becomes a proper structure and container for a purified Rahu. That's a really important statement. So there are, as I think you can see from what I've been saying, fraught energies in this new Jupiter-Saturn conjunction 20-year age. We are forced actually to properly face the question of who am I? What is my correct life path now? What changes do I need to make now? And also each of us will have to establish a new sort of relationship with the society we live in, because we are changing and of course societies are changing, even if the Saturn restrictive parts don't like that. Uranus and Pluto will make change. So, to understand this important issue of what is yourself now, look at the partner blog and video on understanding yourself now. And if you want to go deeper into the astrology of this new age, Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, Uranus and Rahu, you can also go to the partner blog post I've done, the Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, Uranus New Age Astrology. and certainly get a reading from me about who am I now? What is my correct journey forward and direction now? Thank you.